All right, buenas tardes and welcome everyone. Thank you so much for making the time to be here. Welcome to our Latinas in Leadership career panel. Such an honor to be here with everyone today. Hope everyone is having a good morning / afternoon so far. So this event is hosted by our Chicanx Latinx Student Success Center and our Student Involvement Center here at San Jose State University. This event was created to highlight the work that's been done in our local community by Latinas, and it's Latinx Heritage Month. Hey, put your hands up. And we want to make sure that we're honoring and trailblazing the work that is being done by Latinas here in our local comunidad of San Jose and the Bay Area. A great place, to be born and raised in and celebrate is East San Jose. So I just wanted to add that today's panelists include Darcy Green, Executive Director of Latinas Contra Cáncer, Mimi Hernandez, Executive Director of the Prosperity Lab, Maria Esther Fernandez, Inaugural Artistic Director of the Cheech Marin Center for Chicano Art and Culture of the Riverside Art Museum, and Gabriela Chavez Lopez, First Executive of the Latina Coalition of Silicon Valley. I encourage y'all to take some notes today. And if any questions do come up and you don't want to forget them, please feel free to use our chat to enter them. We will be having a Q&A session after this proctored question session. And if you would like to wait, there will be an opportunity to actually unmute your mic and ask the question out loud if you're comfortable. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce myself and my colega before we continue. My name is Andy. My pronouns are they, them, ella. I am a student success leader here at the Centro. It is my senior year, but I'm a transfer student, so 7 going on 8, baby, and counting. Aquí estamos y no nos vamos. And I am a Chicanx Studies major with a minor in Women, Gender, Sexuality Studies. I am born and raised in East Side of San Jose, much pride for that. And I am super excited to listen to all of our panelists and their stories that they have to share with us, but particularly excited to hear about Maria Esther Fernandez's story. I have, as a Chicanx Studies major, heard bits and pieces from you, from Dr. Pizarro. So I'm very excited to learn a little bit more about you. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce y'all to my colega, Cindy.
Hey everyone, my name is Cindy Balbuena. My pronouns are she, they. I do work with the Educational Opportunity Program as a new student mentor. And this is my 3rd year participating as a mentor. And I'm a 4th year here at San Jose State. I'm majoring in sociology with a concentration in race and ethnic studies and minoring in Chicano and Chicana studies. My hometown is East LA, but I really do enjoy the San Jose area, especially downtown San Jose. I'm looking forward to hearing more about also Maria Esther Fernandez. I saw your profile. It was just great to see how you incorporate, the arts with everything. So it's wonderful to see. So I will be starting off the questions for all of our panelists here today. And here is the question. The Mexican revista magazine Eres was published in the late 80s and early 90s with its popular slogan, "Y tú quién eres?" translating, "And who are you?" The magazine highlights actors, actresses, musicians, models, athletes who were closely followed by young audience members. Unfortunately, they did not highlight the trailblazers of their time who were enacting positive social change. So today we ask you, each of our guests today is, "Y tú quién eres?" So who are you? Can we have Gabby?
Happy to answer that. Super super important question. So by title, I am the first executive director of the Latina Coalition of Silicon Valley. It's been an organization that has been around for 22 years in Silicon Valley and has really advanced through really the sweat equity and volunteerism of so many women before me. I'm actually the first staff in the history of the organization. So really excited about this milestone in our organization and much needed. But more about me and who I am. I actually just shared this thought on my social media when it was my dad's birthday. And I said, I don't really know in reflection where he ends and I begin, because so much of the work that I do in social change and social justice is really just built into the DNA of my family and has been really passed down from generation upon generation. My family's vocation has always been helping people. I think all of us have taken it on in different ways in our own styles in which we've done that. But just really leaving this place, this world, a better place than we found it is something that is really important to the values of my family. And both of my parents are actually profesores. So Dr. Janice Chavez and Dr. David Lopez raised me, but I'm also the granddaughter of a cafeteria lunch lady and a railroad worker, as well as a Bataan Death March survivor and a prisoner of war. I carry my grandparents' strength, their honor, my parents' strength and honor and fortitude. My family has actually been connected to the same place for 13 generations. My son was the 13th generation born in Nuevo Mexico, La Tierra Encantada, as they call it. But I was born and raised in California, Central Valley, where a lot of the farm worker movement and the idea of organizing was something that was so integral to like my growing up and understanding about the surrounding community. So something I learned firsthand. I experienced art and culture at a young age. I'm a folklorico dancer since I was 3 years old. I taught folklorico, I danced, and I just huge part of who I am and expressing the culture and really being able to express myself in that way. Because my parents were divorced, I was raised by a very independent, strong single mom who was just like a kick-ass in her career and also raised 2 young girls on her own and was super independent. But my dad, on the other hand, was very nurturing and loving and patient. And so I kind of got the best of both of them, I would say. And my dad just growing up, on our 30-minute drive to school, he would teach me so many things. He would call them his, pearls of wisdom. And we would talk about his upbringing and lessons he's learned. And so much of that is instilled in me. But I ended up moving to San Jose when I was in high school. I graduated from Eastside Union. I went to Silver Creek, and I also went to Evergreen Valley. I ended up going to Santa Clara University. It was the first private school I ever attended. That's an experience and story for another day, but it was a unique experience. I studied political science. And so I just am really proud of my family, and I'm proud of the woman that I'm still becoming. I'm proud of the mother that I am. I think about it constantly, how I'm influencing my 3-year-old son, who I'm raising on my own. And so it's, and with the support of like a village, obviously. I don't do it. No one does anything alone. And that's why I'm so happy to share this panel with these amazing mujeres who I get to call friends, confidants, and people that I go to when I need support and sisterhood. And so I'm happy to share some insights, and I'm happy to be able to share a little bit more about me between the lines of my bio.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing, Gabi. I also went to Evergreen College. I'm wondering if you took Andres Quintero for political science.
He's a good friend of mine. We're like the same age, so I don't know that he was my professor, but yes.
Wow, so awesome. Okay, right on. Next, I would love to hear Mimi answer the question.
Hi, thank you so much for sharing, Gabi. We're in an amazing company here, and it took me 2 days to answer this question to narrow it down because we have less than 5 minutes. So who am I? At this age of 53, I'm super comfortable with who I was born to be. who I strive to be and who I am today. For myself, my entrepreneurial family moved here in the 70s from Mexico City. In those days, we moved into the West Side and a neighborhood called Barrio that was known as Barrio Horseshoe. My father was a master baker and he ran his own bakery. My siblings and I helped out during the weekends. My background, my parents' background is my father went to only the second grade. My mother was a housewife, but she did complete some prep school, so she was able to help us with homework. I am the middle child of 7, and being the middle child of 7 teaches you a lot of life skills, and it really teaches you to be the squeaky wheel to try to get things done for yourself and advocate for yourself. I'm someone who heard the call of service very early in my life. My early years growing up in West and downtown San Jose were impacted. I got to meet the late Sofia Mendoza and Blanca Alvarado, Zoe Lofgren, early on in their career. And, experiencing those ladies, their passion and strength and devotion really influenced my life as a young woman growing up in San Jose. I became a mother at the age of 16, and that really cemented my hunger to really attain an education. And during my senior year, for example, I had 2 jobs. I cared for my 2 kids, and I went to high school. And there were years where I struggled financially to get a college degree. But, having experienced hardship early on really instilled that work ethic in me and taught me to stay focused on my long-term goals. Like many of you that we hear when I'm in some of these panels is I also suffered from the imposter syndrome. I wasn't sure if I was ready. I had some self-doubts about my ability to lead. During my first career, I have a portfolio career. My first career was in insurance agencies. I used to manage them. While there, I did earn an AA in business administration at San Jose at San Jose City College. And during that time, I took advantage of learning everything that I could. I was able to earn several certifications and professional designations. Eventually, when the last of my kids graduated high school, I shifted to nonprofit work, and I discovered self-sufficiency and entrepreneurship as a true vehicle of mobility in our Latinx and immigrant communities in San Jose. I did some work for the small business development centers, but eventually I did hit the glass ceiling. And despite all my talent and my award-winning performance and my preparation, I just wasn't getting promoted, So I moved on. And, thanks to, and there's a few of you here that are in here. It was my network of women leaders that really saw my potential and encouraged me to get out of the comfort zone and really pointed to opportunities and open doors. They gave me advice to encourage me, which was transformative in the last 24 months. For my family, I learned, good family values from my mother. My father was a feminist in the 70s when he wasn't popular, and he always encouraged me to be brave. I raised 3 of the fiercest and brightest young women you will find, and a son who understands the importance of uplifting his daughters, and to be a good dad and support system to them. And at home, I have a wonderful fiance that always supports my career and really challenges to get out and challenges me to be my best version every day. So if you ask me who I am a 3-dimensional being. I am the fruit of trailblazing female leadership. I am a business leader. I am a reflection of not what happened to me, but what I chose to do about it. And these days, I'm very proud to be the executive director of an organization that I really dreamed of for years. I'm a mother, a daughter, a sister. I am Mimi Hernandez.
Thank you so much, Mimi. That was great. Now we have our next panelist, who is Esther.
Hello, I'm going to share my screen. I'm visual. I love to have images, and I work with images, as you all know. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Hopefully everything works. Let's see, here we are. Here's a sneak peek. So in answering the question, Who am I? My first answer obviously is mi familia. I come from two wonderfully strong parents who immigrated here from Mexico. I was born in Chicago, Illinois, but raised in Inglewood, California. And my parents really valued education, instilled in me a strong work ethic. I think it's important that when we think of especially the mujeres in our life, especially women of my mother's generation, I'm 50. So we think of them as obviously strong, resilient, especially if they've left their countries of origin. And we think of them as kind of our connection to culture. And beyond that, though, I think what my mother and my grandmother taught me was hard work, criticality, my intellect, all of those things came from them. They are the first feminists. They had expectations for me that far exceeded, I think, what the limitations of their reality allowed for them. However, they were very vibrant, wonderful, wonderful women. And of course, my father, who's still with me, my mom passed, but my father, broke all of the molds, I think, of what we think of stereotypical, fathers, especially when we often are reduced to our stereotypes in our culture. My father always had the expectation that I would complete college, that I would have a job, and that I would just make a way for myself. So that's very important. I'm also a mother. I have two strong, very wonderful young daughters that I learn a lot from. They're constantly teaching me about the world in ways that I would like to think I know, but then they show me something new. And of course, a wonderful partner who has been a perfect example for them of somebody who will just support them and love them unconditionally. So I'm really grateful. I'm really grateful to them. So that's one aspect of who I am. I think important to that is where I come from. As I mentioned, I grew up in Inglewood, California. It was during a time, the LA uprising happened right as I finished high school. The presence in Inglewood was very formative of just the policing that was happening while I was growing up. And then the hunger strikes as an undergrad at UCLA were really, really formative. And I didn't have at the time, I didn't fully come to understand all that was happening in my neighborhood until I took my first Chicanx studies classes at UCLA. And this, I think this time in my life has really shaped the way that I approach the work that I do. And then, of course, I can't mention that I finished my undergrad actually at UC Berkeley. I ended up leaving UCLA. And it was my mentors there, Celia Herrera Rodriguez, an artist, Yolanda Lopez, that really have made me, I think, who I am as a professional. This is a really important image for me because I think what Chicanx and ethnic studies teach us is to be critical of institutions. And so this image is ASCO, which is an artist collective based out of Los Angeles. And they basically there wasn't representation of Chicanx artists, as there still really isn't in cultural institutions, and they spray painted their names on LACMA. And so this to me it's just a very, just a reminder of how important the work that I do in cultural institutions is. And so I'm going to jump ahead and just go through these quickly. These are some of the exhibitions that I've worked on. And I think one of the things that's important in the work that I do is developing strategies to navigate the limitations of institutions, the cultural institutions. I've worked for 16, 17 years now in museums, mainstream museums, and sometimes in ethnic specific arts organizations. And it's learning the strategies to resist the inclination to assimilate into those institutions, for success or for all that. And then developing strategies for storytelling. So this is who I am right here, all of this, and I'll leave it there. Let's see, hold on. There we go.
Thank you so much, Esther.
Yes.
I really did enjoy hearing all of that. It was amazing. Our last presenter for this question is Darcy.
Hey, thank you. I'm so honored to be here with everybody. I mean, it's just an honor to be on this panel with such amazing people. And I'm sitting here listening to your stories and just getting re-inspired by stories I've heard in one way or form in other spaces. And it's just incredible what you all have accomplished. So as I was thinking about how I would best describe to you who I am, I thought about a story. So I'm going to share with you a brief story. And it goes back to when I was very young. So I've born and raised in East San Jose, currently sitting in East San Jose. I went to James Lick High School. My mother and father were also born and raised in East San Jose. My grandparents lived in East San Jose. We've lived here for quite some time. And when I was young, I did tap and ballet, and I was a little dancer. And I don't know if you all remember when the fairgrounds used to have a lot of recitals, maybe they still do that, but we used to go to the fairgrounds during the summer, and they would have us go and do recitals at the fairgrounds for all of our friends and family and people who were there. And we had practiced a dance. Again, I was probably maybe kindergarten or maybe before that, very, very little. So just, a little Darcy. And we had practiced this dance and we're ready to give our recital at the fairgrounds at one of the stages. And I'm there with my parents, and only one other little girl. So like none of the little girls had shown up. Like they didn't show up for the recital. So it was just me and one other little girl, and we're in bumblebee costumes, right? So we have bumblebee costumes. We've got our tap recital down. We're supposed to go out and do this bumblebee dance, and nobody shows up, and our instructor's there, and they're trying to figure out what to do. And the other little girl was scared and didn't want to go on. And my parents encouraged me to do it by myself, to just do the dance, what I had learned up on the stage by myself. So I agreed, right? Okay. So I go up on the stage, I do my dance. At some point, the little girl comes and joins me. And then there's some picture somewhere floating around that's just me and this other little girl in bumblebee costumes doing this dance at the fairgrounds. We did the dance, went on with our day, wonderful. The reason I'm sharing with you this story about me as a bumblebee, as a small child, is because that pretty much is the story of how I became me. My parents behind me, encouraging me to trust my practice, to trust that I know what I'm doing, to trust that I can do it, and to be willing to do it alone, to have that courage to do it alone. Or and to encourage other people to come along with me. And when I think back about that moment, right, there's many things that could have happened, right? We could have just, oh, well, nobody showed up and we're not going to do the dance. Or, my parents could have been like, Darcy, yeah, it's scary. You don't have to do that. But the level of encouragement and courage they tried to instill in me in that moment is really something that stuck with me through life, because that's really how my parents and my family have helped me to navigate the world as a Latina from East San Jose with this passion for service, with not a lot of resources outside of that. This idea that if you practice, if you come prepared, if you're willing to go it alone, if you are willing to show that courage, you can accomplish anything. And it wasn't in that moment that I wasn't afraid, right? Because I still remember this moment, so clearly I was terrified. And it's still, I get terrified just thinking about it now. But it wasn't that I wasn't afraid, but it was the willingness to push past that fear in order to go and do what I had been practicing to do and accomplish that day for myself, and for other people who hadn't joined us there that day, but were there during practice. And so when I think about who I am, I'm a mom, single mom. I'm a lifelong East Side resident. And those of us who are born and raised in East San Jose tend to start with that because it is a big piece of our identity. I run a nonprofit. I've been in elected office. I'm a daughter. I'm a sister. But when I think about what boils down to the core of who I am, it's somebody who's willing to take risks, somebody who believes, as Eleanor Roosevelt says, in the beauty of my dreams, someone who believes wholeheartedly in the power of sisterhood, someone who believes in the intentional investment in Latina leadership, and someone who believes in myself and my ability to accomplish my dreams. And I have my parents to thank probably, but I also have this amazing community that I've grown up in East San Jose, because I'm sure many of you have a bumblebee story. Maybe you weren't dressed up like a bumblebee, probably weren't dressed up like a bumblebee, but you probably have a story where there was a moment where you were afraid, or a moment where you were nervous to jump, or a moment where you needed maybe a little push in order to achieve something that was important to you. And it was your community, your family, your loved ones, or just what I think the Bumblebee story for me has evolved into over time is this deeply rooted sense of responsibility to the people who've come to me, to the trailblazers in my community, to my cannery worker grandmother and glassblower grandfather, to my parents who have sacrificed, to this community in East San Jose that nurtures and believes in all of us children of the neighborhoods. That courage that I experienced as a little bumblebee way back then has evolved into this sense of purpose and gratitude. So in addition to the different labels and identities that I hold as a Latina and a mom and a nonprofit executive, much deeper than that is a drive that comes from accumulation of all of these experiences, but this deeply rooted sense of responsibility, courage, and gratitude for everything I've been able to experience in this lifetime. And I'm so very excited to be here with all of you, and maybe during Q&A even hear about some of your stories. Thank you.
Thank you all so much. I just wanted to quickly recap what I heard, some of the key points that I really thought were crucial to kind of reemphasize. And what I gathered was that community and family wealth that we hold in our stories and in our cultura are something that plays a big role into our motivation and the progress and achievements that we, you know, are capable of. It's also serving as a reminder of like the potential that we hold, right? But just having that familial aspect, that community, that kind of reassurance, right? To guide us through the journeys that we take, which I really appreciate hearing from y'all.
Awesome. Thank you all. For this second question, I'd love to ask Esther and Mimi. Please let me know if I am not saying your names correctly. For a second question is, how do you define leadership and how does it show up in your everyday life?
Who would you like to go first? Can I just jump right in?
Please.
Okay. So one of my mentors that I mentioned, artist Celia Herrera Rodriguez, had it was kind of like a mantra that she would say in class, which is living in a good way, the importance of living in a good way, of being in a good way, of working in a good way. And really, I mean, it comes from kind of the indigenous philosophy of like, what do we leave behind for the generations to come, but also just how do we work as people? And so I think for me, leadership is not just about who's in charge and what decisions they get to make, but it's how are they making these decisions? What are they taking into consideration? What is it that they value? You know, our values, I think, really define and shape how it is that we're going to be as leaders. And so working ethically, working with integrity, really rooted in who we are and in where we come from, I think makes for great leadership. And then also, how do we then pass that on? And that all comes with values, the value of not just being successful and not just being good at what you do, but bringing others along and sharing your knowledge, being generous, giving opportunities. All of that, I think, defines leadership for me. And how does it show up in my everyday life? Well, it shows up, I mean, in really strange ways, I think. Just obviously at work is the first place you look, and there's a lot of young mujeres that I work with, that I have worked with in my career, and others who I've learned a lot from. You know, my job is typically in the stage in my career is to have internships and teach and provide opportunities, but also just understanding and being humble enough to know that I don't know everything. You know, after 17 years, if I'm still learning and growing, and I think we need to have that humility to know that we have things to learn from others who are still coming up. So yeah, I would say those are important qualities, and how we live it every day, how we do it every day is what's important.
I agree, Maria Esther. For me, being a leader is not just who is the jefa, who's in charge here, but really who can head or be the figure for an effort or an organization, or even just an ideal. Ideals, efforts, and organizations need leadership. And being a leader, for me, it requires attention. I have to have a clear idea of the problem that I'm trying to solve. I need to uplift those around me and listen to them, because the best thing you can do as a leader is to inspire your team and come up with solutions together. That's why you usually surround yourself with very capable, smart, dedicated people. So for me, it's a call to contribute solutions and owning both the achievement and the failures of your work, because you can't get better if you're afraid of failure, because that'll pass on and it'll poison your team. So being able to own both of those things, for me every day, when I rise, I try to make sure that my team is showing up, that we're being focused on our mission, that we're making decisions that are going to impact the services and our daily operations. We want to make sure that we are doing impactful work that changes lives of the people that participate in all of our programs. It's constantly coming up with new programs. And then we're also, whenever we do a program as a leader, I want to make sure we identify any issues that come up, that we learn and improve and have constant improvement. And the last thing I would say, that the way it shows up for me is for us as a nonprofit, we want to maintain the relationships with our partners, with the people who are funding our programs, with the CBOs and other organizations, where we can share resources and identify ways in which we can all help each other solve problems and stay focused in helping this community. And Darcy, to your point, I grew up in the West Side, but I lived in the East Side. My family, my children, my grandchildren are growing up in East San Jose, and it's a wonderful community to be in. And it is like a cradle of leadership out there. So thank you.
I wanted to add one thing to that, is which I think touches on what Mimi said, is in your work, what are you in service of? What is it that you're in service of? And not just a goal, but what is it that you're doing to leave this world or this community in a better way?
Amazing. Thank you so much both for such thoughtful and beautiful responses. Esther, I really liked how you basically debunked the idea that leadership is more than being in the position, getting that pay, being at the top. It's what you do with that. And I feel very empowered by that, because sometimes you don't always have that position, but it doesn't mean that you're not a leader nonetheless. So I appreciate your words. And Mimi, you mentioned something very important, uplifting your team, right? Making solutions together. That is so crucial as a leader, because sometimes it's keeping the team together and keeping everyone grounded in your mission together, that emotional work that is really not accounted for or seen as important or worthy of pay, So I really appreciate both of y'all for sharing that. Now,
Yeah, I'll be introducing the other question for our panelists, Darcy and Gabby. The question is, did you always have a vision for yourself? If yes, who or what influenced this vision? If not, what experiences helped you decide what you wanted to do in life? For example, what advice would you give students who are undecided on what to major in or what career path to pursue? If I can ask Darcy for you to start first, please.
So I've never really had, I mean, obviously I have goals and things that I wanted to accomplish. Um, I've always been in pursuit of impact. And so I'm very flexible about what form that comes in or what position I hold in order to make that happen or what organization I work for. But I've always known that I wanted to have a career that has been in service to my community. And I've been able to do that my entire career. And when I think back about what experiences may have impacted that and how I ended up wanting to embark on a career in service to my community, I think back, part of me is like, I don't know why I'm this way. I just have always been this way. But I think back to when I was in 5th grade, I was a music student and our music program was being cut from our little elementary school in East San Jose, and our teachers went on strike over that and a few other things, programs being cut. And I remember coming home and telling my dad, I need to be at this strike, like this protest. And my dad's like, okay. And I'm, obviously a little girl. And so he helps me make a sign, like a protest sign with little music notes on the front and, don't cut our music program written on the back. And we put it on a stake. And I went out to this strike in front of the Alhambra Union School District, and my dad parked right on the corner. And then fast forward to middle school, I was helping to organize students around a pothole issue in front of my middle school at Joseph George, which is up in East San Jose. And what I can say is those experiences, the music program ended up being cut for a while, and we didn't get the pothole filled. But this experience of, even as a young person, even as a young Latina in East San Jose, just the recognition that even as one person, but joined with other people, the amount of power we had to make noise, to get noticed, to move something, became very addictive for me. And as I was thinking about, organizing students around a very dangerous pothole in front of our middle school, or later on when I was in high school, we organized around, I was a PAC leader, and PAC is a local community organizing organization. And we were organizing students around a youth center and library and different resources in East San Jose. But very early on, I became aware that I had power. I had power as a person, as a human being. I had power as a Latina. I had power as a resident of East San Jose. I had power because I had the ability to act. And I wanted to do something with that. And I took it very seriously. So I tried to join with other people who also felt the same way, that it didn't matter what our family's income was. It didn't matter what neighborhood we lived in. It didn't matter if we were under-resourced. None of that mattered. We still had power to do something. And little moments along the way, either as a youth organizer or as when I was working in the legislature, or later on as an elected official, or now as a nonprofit ED, that has continued to be true, this understanding and belief and witnessing that people do have power and ability to make amazing things happen when they're in community together. So those experiences early on that became very addicting for me, that were proving something to me that I could do something, is how I decided that this is what I want to do as a career. And again, I've been really fortunate to have been able to do that.
Thank you so much, Darcy. Now we'll be moving on to Gabby.
Awesome. So I, like Darcy, haven't had a super rigid vision of what I anticipated my, life to be like growing up, but I did have a pretty clear idea of what felt good and what felt not so good. And I think that really, through like my own empathy and understanding, I know encouraging people and getting people to believe in themselves and their potential and uncovering those gifts and those attributes was something that I was so like just made my heart sing. And so I think the vocation of women's empowerment, of Latina empowerment, is something that's always been written on my heart, since I was a young person. And my parents were my first teachers, and they were a lot of people's teachers. They were the few Chicano professors at Fresno State that so many people would go to for everything under the sun. And so I would hear the students talk about their evolution of just, oh, Dr. Chavez, like you changed my life, or Dr. Lopez, and I just would witness that and like, oh my gosh, you can have this tremendous influence on someone's life just through teaching and education and exposure and modeling. And just, so I believed that it was possible. Like Darcy, I believed that I was powerful and I could change people's lives, and that felt really good. And my parents were doing that, and I witnessed that, and you got to hear the feedback from students 10 years later that said, Dr. Lopez, that class that you taught really just changed the trajectory. And so I really think that's when it clicked for me that this work was going to be my life's work. And the thing that I will say is to try as many things as possible, and to figure out what would you do for no pay. Sorry, my mom just set off the smoke alarm in my house. I don't know how loud that is. Mom, can you open the door? Okay. Multi-generational household here. So sorry about that. I love her, but so I think it's just I'm so sorry. Let me get this resolved and we'll come back.
For Darcy, did you have any advice to students who are undecided or on what majors to kind of pursue? I know that was also like a question. I don't know if you wanted to add something.
Yeah. As Gabby mentioned, try things out. Take advantage of internships. I had internships. I interned at the city council when I was in high school doing street and traffic work. I interned outside of high school when I was a little older. Utilize your networks and just try different things out. And if you don't like it, great, you can rule that off. That's not something you're interested in. But just remember, it's all possible, right? It is all possible. You are incredibly talented and brilliant, more than you even realize. So go out there and figure out what makes, as Gabby said, it makes your heart sing. What is it that gets you excited? When I get up every day, I can't wait. I cannot wait to start working. When I come home after I put my son to bed, I'm researching and reading. It gets me up in the morning, the work that I do. And that's what I want for all of you, right? Is to use your skills and your education in service to something bigger than yourself, but also for something that is so fulfilling that you just can't wait to do it every day. And the only way that you figure out what that is, and hopefully you figure out what that is early. If you don't, sometimes you figure it out later, and that's fine too. There's no timeline. It's not a race. You're not in competition with anybody. This is your path, and that's beautiful and magical. So just take the time to figure out what is it that just gets you up every day and makes you so happy. Utilize your networks to get internships, meet with people. I'm happy to meet with and talk with anybody about my path and the different jobs that I've had. Have coffees, have Zoom meetings, have in-person meetings, and just do the research and find out what exists. The other thing I'll say is that, as I mentioned earlier, like don't get too pigeonholed into I need this exact title, because the impact you want to have may come in many different forms. And there may be so many jobs out there you don't even realize exist. So don't be too rigid, don't be too hard on yourself, but just have fun exploring what it is that makes you very happy to get up in the morning.
Thank you. Gabby, whenever you're ready.
Thanks y'all for dealing with that. So what I really wanted to say, and everything, like I doubled down on Darcy, and I watched her growing up as well, doing her thing, and we all learn from each other, are inspired by each other's work. But, for me, it was a lot about volunteerism. That was in many ways how I found my vocation and my interests. It was just volunteering. And when one of my mentors would invite me to an event, even if I knew nothing about it, and I'm like, I don't even know what this is about, I would just show up. I would show up time and time again and learn and listen, especially if I didn't know what it was about. I'm like, well, I want to go learn what this is all about. And so just be open to learning, just be a sponge. I would introduce myself to people time and time again, and they maybe, they were important people and they met a lot of people all the time, but, finally the 20th time I would introduce Gabby, right? And I'm like, yes, that's me. You know who I am. And sometimes that's what it takes. And you just got to keep showing up, and just keep volunteering, keep showing people, they'll start kind of putting you in places like, oh, okay, she's interested in this. I like that. Or, they see your effort and they see your commitment, and they'll want to help you. And I always say, I never mind helping people that are helping other people. So it's like, people always ask me, like, why do people help you? So I said, because I'm helping others. And so it's like this domino effect. And so I think like that's a lot of it. I've learned the most from jobs that I've hated. And that's okay. You learn what you don't want, and I avoid it at all costs. I'm like, okay, pure sales is not for me, but hey, I figured that out, but it was a great experience, and I use it, a lot of those lessons, to this day. So I think, process of elimination isn't a bad strategy either, to kind of hone in on what it is that you love. And that stuff that, like I was saying, that you'll do for free. I acted as the executive director of Latina Coalition for 18 months for basically because I loved it and because it made my heart sing. And eventually people started like really seeing me in that role, and like, okay, like, you're doing it, you're doing it. And our funders came along, and it was a really great thing, and it kind of created a role in and of itself. But you can do what your passions are and your vocation is as a full-time job. You just have to be able to take those skills, hone on those skills, and learn from the things that you don't like. But yeah, everything that, like I said, everything that Darcy said was really resonating. And it's taken me a while. I'm 33, just as a context. Most of my 20s was like bumping against walls, mistakes. Oh no, I don't like that. I don't, it was like, ooh, this, I kind of like this. But now that I'm, kind of in this stage, it's a little bit more clear to me. So have fun.
Yes, no, definitely. I loved I'll like recap what Darcy said earlier. Is like how you were always in pursuit of impact. I feel like that was a great way of also just changing my mindset, which was great. And then also just Gabby, I really appreciate when you said that, I just keep going and then continue to feed your interest, right? And then you will find your passion throughout. So I really appreciate that. And I'll move it on to Andy.
Muchas gracias. So for our fourth question, I will be asking, in your current leadership positions, what has been your greatest accomplishment and what does it mean to you? And for this question, either Esther or Mimi can go first.
I knew the answer the minute I finished reading the sentence. So for me, it has been the assemble or congregation of the most talented team of small business, entrepreneurship training, and business advising group of individuals that is out here in Santa Clara County, certainly if not the entire Bay Area. So for me, being able to identify, recruit, and bring as part of my team just about the best people that can do the type of services and can help me solve the problem that I'm trying to solve is one of my most proudest accomplishments. Recently, I'll just illustrate it really quickly. So we had a 3-year projection and a 5-year projection that we did, since we're business trainers, and we surpassed it in 12 months. So I was very proud to see my team step up last year during COVID. It was a difficult time for the people that we serve. I'm sure many people here can speak to COVID and the many effects to small businesses. We saw that firsthand, and I'm super proud that my team stepped up and devoted their energy in the last 15 months to the small businesses and to our mission and vision, and to growing at the rapid pace that we did. And then now I'm proud that we're addressing our growing pains because we did, like I said, we hit our 3-year projections in a very short span of time. So that's what I'm the most proud of right now.
I think for me, it's basically just to keep moving forward. I mean, regardless of difficulties and struggles that I've experienced, whether in my life or professionally, I mean, I think there's value in those struggles and the importance of sharing them with others, of telling our stories. As a young person, I never really got to see myself reflected back. Living in this country as a daughter of immigrants, I felt like my home life was very different to what I saw at school and what I experienced in my community to a certain extent. And so I think that's what has led me on this path that I'm on as a curator. I also understood the value of language as a young person, like being able to tell your own story in your own language, to own your story, to be able to contextualize your life for others. Our experiences that, you know, as immigrants, as the daughter of immigrants, it's not the norm. And so there's power in that. And so I think, when I think of the greatest accomplishment, I think for me, it's working collaboratively with artists to bring those stories to our community so that we can see flickers of recognition in youth, in the people that come through. When I curated the exhibition, Consuelo Jimenez Underwood's exhibition, we had a gentleman, I happened to leave my office and go outside. I always tell this story. And I happened to go outside just into the galleries. I loved walking out into the galleries and just being with the art. And there was this older gentleman standing in front of one of her murals. And he was not a Latino, it's not a, Mexicano, standing in front of it. And he looked at it. And at first I thought, okay, I'm going to have to explain something, or I don't know what's going on here. And I came up to him and he was very moved, and he looked at me and he says, I know what that's about. He said, that's about Ireland, where he was from. And he was talking about the occupation in Ireland and how he grew up. And so I think, to me, that's what art can do. It can bridge our experiences. But also as a young person, to see yourself and to see your stories handled with care and presented beautifully is powerful. So I would say that.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for such great answers. In the light of time, I want to make sure we have time to ask any questions at the end that our audience does. So I'm going to keep it moving on to number 5.
Hey, so my question is gonna be for Darcy and Gabby. The question is, what would you say are the leadership strides Latinas have made up to this date? And how have you affirmed, mentored, supported Latinas seeking upward mobility in their careers and in their lives? If you can start first, Darcy.
Oh man, I mean, Latinas, we're doing it all, right? I mean, we're the backbone of economy. I mean, I'm in the area of health, and just as a principle, right? We believe that the leadership of Latinas is the key to our healthcare obstacles and healthcare struggles. It's amazing in this time to see how much leadership is coming from the Latina community here in this valley, across the state and across the country. And you see it in every sector, right? And you see it in business, and you see it in real estate, and you see it in the arts, and you see it in politics. And just the unique lens, how inherently capable we are to be change makers and trailblazers in these areas. And then on the other hand, we see that there's just so much left to go around wage and lots of other things that we have to improve on. The second part of this question is, how have you affirmed, mentored, supported Latinas seeking upward mobility in their careers and in their life? And this is, if I had answered the previous question around what would be something that I'm most proud of in my career, I think it would be that. I like Gabby, get a lot of satisfaction and joy out of supporting other Latinas who I can see are brilliant and talented and have so much to contribute to the world. And that's also a part of leadership, is helping and supporting other Latinas to be in those positions when they need someone to talk to, when they need help moving up. Because as someone said it earlier, none of us do this alone. I have definitely benefited from people who have blazed trails, people who have supported me with very little information about me, people who have helped me to achieve what I want to achieve in my life. So over my career, whether it's been in party politics, whether it's been while elected office, or just in community organizing, have really tried to take extra care to support the leadership of Latinas wherever it is. And I think that's how we continue to grow as a community, in making sure that it's only going to get easier for other people who are coming up behind you or alongside of you. And many of the obstacles that some of us have faced, if we're doing our job right, those obstacles won't exist for other Latinas who are trying to attain the same thing or trying to go along the same path. There may be new obstacles that exist, but hopefully we can alleviate a future leadership from those obstacles we faced.
Just so I think what's super encouraging for me is seeing the numbers of Latinas enrolled in college and graduating and pursuing a higher education. Education is one of those ways in which, you know, we can advance ourselves, advance our families. I've experienced it through my parents and them doing what they've done in their lives and kind of advancing us in our families. So I think that's super encouraging. I love all of the entrepreneurship and the numbers that I see as Latinas opening businesses, because that wage gap is disgusting. 33 cents on the dollar in Silicon Valley, that's what Latinas are earning compared to our white counterparts. And the sad thing is it gets worse as we become more educated. So I bring up 2 points. I'm excited that they're going to school, but that the wage gap still persists is really just not something that I'm excited about. But I want to find solutions too. And I think entrepreneurship is one of those ways in which we can also close that wage gap. And so I'm really excited about the entrepreneurial spirit. I'm excited about the leadership in our area. Like Darcy said, we have 3 Latina city council members. We have a Latina on the board of supervisors. 10 years ago, it wasn't that way. And so that's really encouraging that our policymakers have our lens and have our, you know, a lived experience that understands where we're coming from. And so that's something that's super exciting to see those strides being made and being, you know, that we see that elected leadership is really quite encouraging. But, you know, it's my life's work to do the second part of that question, uplifting, empowering, providing exposure and opportunities for Latinas to advance in their leadership. We're the best investment anyone can make. I was tuning into a webinar this morning that actually the U.S. Hispanic Chamber of Commerce was presenting some data at their conference saying that Latinas are the 12th largest economy in the world, us as a group. And that's amazing. We have so much to contribute. And so I think it's a really powerful group of women. And like I said, we got to just keep investing. And the amplification is clear. You lift up Latinas, you lift up families, you lift up communities, everybody benefits. So we got to keep investing in Latinas.
Right on, beautifully said, Gabi, and muchas gracias, Darcy. Moving on to our next question. My favorite question: who is your biggest cheerleader and why? For Mimi and Esther.
I'm gonna say my mother. Who has now passed, but she was my biggest cheerleader and I would say my gentle, at times harsh critic, which was okay. I mean, I think she was a good balance. And so now with her, you know, passing, it's really made me reflect on what makes a good cheerleader, so that I could be that for not only my daughters, but for other mujeres and other people, just other people in my life. And so I've been, like I mentioned earlier, I've been blessed to have wonderful mentors who are generous of their time and expertise. And I think I'm kind of stepping into a role now where I can do that for others, and really thinking about what is being a big, cheerleader of helping someone advance in their career. But also, one thing I will say is that it's important to think about who you surround yourself with. Who are the people who see you for who you are, accept you, support you, and celebrate your successes, right? And look and see your successes as their successes. There may not be many, and that's okay. But I think as I've gotten older, I've been, really reflecting on the friendships I have, and family too. You can extend that lens in family, and really thinking about how they level that support for you. That's really important, I think.
For me, last Wednesday, we graduated our summer cohorts, and being around the women that we had been training during the summer on topics to help them reach self-sufficiency was so inspiring, and it really just gave me wings. So hearing from them firsthand, which we had been meeting over Zoom for the most part, I would say they all turned into like the best cheerleading squad that I could ask for, because it reminded me, and he gave a face, and I felt like the aura of these women that were just grateful and felt accomplished because they invested their time in coming to the trainings. They ran their business, they went to jobs, they held the house down during the pandemic, and through many challenges. And they came through. So those were, for me, other than my family, which my granddaughters are very supportive. My fiance is very supportive. My parents. It's the people that we serve. And I'm sure, Maria Esther and Darcy and Gabi can attest to that. Is hearing the direct impact of the people that we serve. That just gives us wings, to keep going. And that's the reason we rise every morning.
Beautiful. Speaking of rising every morning, your colorful everything aesthetic makes me feel like we're seeing the sunshine for a second time today. So thank you, Mimi, and gracias, Esther.
Yes, we'll be moving on to the last question, which I think we have time for everybody to speak on. So we can have everybody just jump in once they're ready to answer. The question is, knowing what you know now, what advice would you give to Latinas, Latinx college students seeking leadership opportunities?
I'll just say really quick, say yes. When you get to the point where you're thinking or taking or offered a leadership position, say yes. Don't get caught up second guessing yourself, or if you're ready, because you are. Just say yes. There's a lot of cis het white men out there saying yes all the time. And so, I feel like it's important for us to take those leaps, and then take advantage of all the help that's out there. Look for it, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. It's okay not to know things. I'm always learning new things about my profession. And say yes.
I'm going to jump in and say, trust your instincts. If something and the situation doesn't feel good, doesn't seem right, double check, trust your instinct. There's a reason why we have, from our mothers, the intuition. I believe in it. To trust your instinct, be brave. Don't sell yourself short. If somebody questions how much your male counterparts ask you how much you're making versus them, because we are selling ourselves short very often. Uplift other women and just live your best life.
So for me, I heard this one time I can't even remember where now, but it was, you can have it all, but you can't have it all at once. And sometimes there's times in your life where your career is just skyrocketing, but maybe your health is like taking a back seat, or, you're being like the best mom, but your career is taking so you can have it all. It's just understand that at different points in your life, you're going to have to focus on different things. We can't do it all. It's burnout city. and you don't want to put yourself in that position. So just focus on a couple of things, and then at the next stage in your life, you can focus on other things. But yeah, I would just say that.
I would say believe in yourself the most. Like, be the person who believes in yourself the most. And we all look for validation, and that's good. And we all have people who prop us up and cheerlead for us. And I've certainly benefited from that. But there may be times where people don't see your vision, or they don't know what you know about yourself, or for whatever's going on in their lives, they're not able to see your potential. But you can believe in yourself the most. And part of what that comes with is also being kind to yourself, right? So be kind to yourself, prioritize your health and happiness, believe in yourself the most, and understand it's all possible. As Gabby said, maybe not all on the same day, maybe not all at the same time, but I truly believe for Latinas, I mean, we're powerful, we're naturally powerful, we're natural advocates, we're inherently brilliant. We have what we need to accomplish what we want to do with our lives. It is all possible, but you have to believe in yourself the most and go in there knowing that that you have what it takes. And if you need to do more practice, more education, more expertise, you can do all of that. But you have all that you need already.
Wonderful. Muchas gracias. Y'all have what it takes. Y'all listening? Y'all have what it takes. Thank you for those beautiful words of affirmation. All right, so we are now going to transition into our drum roll, please. I know I can hear y'all, even though y'all are muted. Thank you, Lily. I see you. We have some questions in the chat. As I am reading the questions, please feel free, if anything comes up for you, type it in the chat, drop your questions. If not, there will be a moment where I will ask folks to feel free to step in and unmute the mic and ask questions. So please feel free to. So our first question from the chat, from our audience, is you all mentioned the different capacities that you serve as leaders. How or what do you do to take care of your mental health and well-being and to not burn out?
I take Sundays off. I draw the line at Sundays as much as I can. I need a day to refresh, to spend time with my granddaughters, to ride my Vespa. Just, yeah, take a day where you just like, that you don't touch.
I love my girl time. So I lead the perfect organization for that because I have a lot of girls in my network. I love my girl time. I love my wine. I love my day trips to the ocean. I love to see the water. It makes me feel, you know, just, I don't know, joy and lightness. So
I love water too.
I think I'm learning from my daughters and their generation that it's okay to have a good work-life balance. I think it's something that I understood, but I think I'm really learning now that it's okay to prioritize your mental health. It's okay to take it's something I did with them when they were younger, although I don't know that I had the language around it, but whenever I knew that I could tell that school or whatever it was, we would just take a day off. We'd just say, okay, we're just going to take a day off. And I didn't realize, maybe at the time it was just also, I wanted to take a day off, but from running around. But I think for me now, I work a lot for sure. I find myself checking email all the time and working, but having to step back and saying, no, you know, I'm going to do what I need to do for myself. It's okay. It's just, I mean, it sounds so simple, but it really, I think it took me some time to just own it.
As Latinas, prioritizing our self-care and mental health is a radical act of defiance. I mean, I take my self-care and mental health so seriously because I think it's my responsibility for myself and for my family and also for my community. I need to be here for the long haul because these are long fights that we're in, right? And people are real lives and people are depending on us. And my family's depending on me and I'm depending on me. So I don't use self-care, mental health as kind of this like fluffy thing on the side. it's what I need to do in order to stay in this fight, in order to stay in my impact, in order to stay in that zone. And for me, knowing that there are systems and institutions out there that are counting on the fact that we're going to continue to be bogged down by these economic oppressions that we're facing and these political issues that we're facing and all of these things that we're facing as Latinas that are meant to keep us from succeeding. So this act of self-care and this act of caring about your mental health is also a radical act of defiance. So in that way, I view it as still a part of my impact and take it really seriously.
Thank you. Moving on to our next question from the chat. How do you go about building friendships and finding community on a day-to-day basis? And how do you sustain yourself while doing the work you do? But y'all kind of already answered the second part. So feel free to answer the first part.
I think for me, it's finding common ground, finding those things you have in common. There's always something that, maybe it's just the way, as simple as the color of nail polish that you and some stranger are wearing, and you say, I really love your nail color, just having a smile and just giving a compliment. And then you never know where that conversation goes. I make a lot of friends because I'm very chatty. I mean, my name's Gabby, so I'm very chatty. And so that will lead to another conversation. Oh, where do you get, okay. And then, it kind of builds off of there. But I think finding those commonalities and those things that you share, and it's even outside of the Latino culture. I was mentoring a young Asian woman this morning, and so we found that common ground. And so it's really finding those allies and kind of thinking outside of even your own experience, right?
I'm just like, I'm painfully introverted, like painfully introverted. I don't make relationships very easily. And so for me, it's been one, just the act of vulnerability, right? To be able to create friendships, but also knowing like that is the most beautiful piece of life. Like these relationships that we're able to build along the way are also super fulfilling for me personally. So for me, like the act of creating relationship is a little bit of work, again, because I'm just ridiculously painfully introverted. So it does take a little bit of effort, but I know that that's what life is about, is these relationships we're building. And if you can build these relationships with Latinas in community, it is unlike anything else.
Thank you, Darcy. Before the next panelist that would like to answer this question, actually, please feel free to elaborate yourself on your previous question if you want to add a little bit more for this question.
I think, I mean, I grew up in a big family. Like I said, the middle child has to be a little diplomatic, even though diplomacy is not one of my gifts. But I think for me, I have friends that I met in the 5th grade that I still have a good relationship with. So I think you have to do the work. You have to reach out. Even during COVID, I was still calling friends. I still handwrite notes, even though my handwriting is now terrible. But I find those friendships to be just the difference on difficult days. It's been a difficult year. It's been a last difficult 7 days for me, and being able to count on my network, on my team here, I'm super glad that I invested the time in getting to know people and meeting them, not just professionally, but a little bit about their personal level. I think you can't just call on people when you need something. You need to, like, hey, how are you? Is there something I can hear you, or investing in people, I think, is one of the best uses of your time. Invest in people.
I don't think there's much I can add to. I agree with what everybody said. I'm an introvert too. Connections, I think, form over time for me, but I do, in the work that I do, I'm out in the public a lot, which is really interesting for me as an introvert. So I have been making a lot of connections, and feeling that sense of exposure, I think, in the position that I'm in right now has been new. So I am still kind of straddling this, like really being out there and meeting all kinds of people, but then also kind of keeping some things to myself, which is part of, I think for me, self-care. So, so yeah, thank you for all that you said. That's been very helpful.
Okay, so I have a question that I've seen here, and it was also talking about like burning out, right? In times of being burnt out, what or who reminds you of your light and beauty?
I think I answered in the chat, but it's for me, it's my 3-year-old son who just is always smiling and laughing and messing, like he's a little jokester. So he cracks me up, and when I'm trying to take something real serious, he kind of breaks that up for me. So it's just nice. I take him to the playground a lot as like our routine after 5, and just seeing the other kids and how he interacts with them is really just reminds me to be playful and just enjoy being in the moment. I put my phone away and I just am like, okay, this is my time. So kind of reminds me to just get back to that child nature, finding his biggest thing is wow to like everything. And so it reminds me to just wow, that like car is moving, like it's just like he finds the most mundane things like so exciting. So it kind of reminds me to just like, I should think that same way about like little things that happen in my life. So just the things that you can just say, wow, that's so awesome.
When I have doubts, my go-to place is my grandmother's. I always feel like no matter how hard life gets or the challenges or, the days that are just a little bit more heavier than others, I feel like whatever I'm feeling, there's nothing I can overcome because I came from really strong women that went through far worse things that I could ever imagine, wars, famine, losing children. So that's I check in, I do inventory of all the blessings that I have in my life, and I just kind of like snap myself back in as much as I can.
I would say familia, my daughters, for sure. Yeah, definitely. Just that simple.
Like Mimi, I do kind of this assessment for myself. I certainly have lots of doubts and little voice right in your head that sometimes appears when something is big or challenging, or maybe you might second guess yourself. And so I have a list of affirmations and a list of mantras and things that I do privately for myself, with myself, in order to bring myself out of that. Most importantly, though, I don't I allow myself to feel all of that, and I don't beat myself up for the times that I am feeling self-doubt. I'm like, just let it come in, I understand it, and then let it pass.
You touched on it a little bit, Darcy, but the next question focuses on, doubt. What motivates you when you are having these moments of doubt or these difficult situations that you find yourself crossing?
For me, it's just staying focused on the task at hand, whatever it is. That it's important for whatever reason it needs to be done. It's important for it to be done. And if I'm feeling doubt, I agree with what Darcy just said about letting yourself be in that moment. I think that there's something powerful about just kind of owning your feelings and saying, I'm experiencing this, why, kind of try to get at maybe the why if you can, and then allowing it to go through and then just pushing forward. I feel for me, that's a good strategy. Sometimes the being in the moment isn't always the most fun for my family, but that's okay. I try to make it as painless as I can sometimes. But it's important. I think it's important that we have those moments and then we push through. So So yeah, just it's okay to be in doubt, but because inevitably what happens when you finish something is you realize, wow, I could do that.
Thank you all for beautiful answers. Oh, did anyone else want to share anything else on that question?
I think we have somebody raising their hand.
I was just going to mention that I had answered this question yesterday, and I thought that for me, I actually visualize my parents and my grandparents standing with me when I'm feeling really nervous about something. And even though I'm an extrovert, people get it really confused that I'm not scared, to be in certain spaces. But a lot of my ancestors and my parents have made a lot of sacrifices and have taken a lot of risks for me to have that mic, for me to be on that stage, for me to have this platform and this opportunity. And so I will literally visualize them there with me. And I knew them well, and I got to grow up with them. And so they always had their head held up high. And I can just hear them saying, Mija, you got this. And so that's just something I carry with me, and just that visualization really helps me with their like hands on my shoulders and everything like that. So I've had to call on them for a few things.
Is it okay if I ask a question? Okay. So hello, I'm Itzi Gaona, and I'm 23 years old, and I'm going to be graduating this spring. Basically, my question was, I was wondering what advice you would give your 23-year-old self. Yeah, thank you.
Dump that guy. No, I'm just kidding. I made some interesting decisions on people that I dated in my 20s, and I think it's real, and I think those personal relationships can have an effect on our lives and on our own trajectories. And so keeping people around you that are supportive and helpful, and not just your friends, but who you get in romantic relationships with, to like totally get on off another topic. I would say probably dump that guy that I was dating when I was 23, and a few after that too. But be very mindful about who you invite into your life and into your head and heart.
I would say, well, I was married very young, and I had children very young. I had 4 children by the time I was 23. What I would tell myself is that you don't have to be your mother married to the same person for over 65 years. Sometimes a marriage just fails and you're not meant to be together. You're going to be okay on your own because you got this. I would have left a relationship that was very toxic a lot earlier on. So that's, but it's easy to Monday night quarterback, right? So that's what I would say.
I would say a couple of things. One would be, there's no gatekeepers to these things, right? I mean, I think when I was younger, especially because I was in politics when I was younger, and you think there are so many people who are gatekeeping your life, right? And so many people that you have to go and have to give you permission to do these things. And then you realize as you get older, like, no, that's not true. Like it's all very possible. And there aren't people there. I mean, there might be people who think they're gatekeepers, but there's plenty of gates to like bust through, right? That's the point of trailblazing, right? You're blazing something through. Create a new gate, create a new bridge, create a new table. You're not at one table, build another one, right? So don't let these artificial things get in the way. There's always a way if you're willing to do the work to figure out how to get where you want to go. And the other thing I would tell myself is your thoughts are very powerful. So your thoughts are so powerful. What you think will become, right, your reality. So what you think about yourself, what you think about your potential, what you think about the impact you can have, be kind to yourself. Like your thoughts are so powerful, and learn how to control those early on, and only think about the things you want to happen.
That's so true. There's things we say to ourselves in our mind that we wouldn't say to people in our lives. So I think trying to develop strategies around that early is important. And I do really believe in verbalizing what you want to accomplish. Visualizing it, allowing yourself to dream. I think that's the first step at getting towards your goals. I really do. Sounds a little kind of romantic, but it really isn't. I think it's a strategy that works.
Thank you. Really love the responses. And the other question is, who holds you accountable and mentors you?
So I have a board that I answer to. I like the checks and balances. It helps me to grow as a leader and as a executive director. So for me, it's important to have a board that is a working board that checks in with me, that keeps you on my toes. So for me, professionally, is that just my board, I think, and who mentors me. Wow. So I can count quite a few women, but I learn a lot from young women. I do, because I'm a mom and my daughters are the ages of many of you guys. But I feel a lot. I learn a lot, and I'm very inspired and very. I feel very assured when I hear how strong and opinionated and chingonas young women are these days. And I sometimes wish when I talk to my contemporaries that we have had the courage that these young women have.
Thank you so much, Mimi. I'd like to ask this next question to Esther. How can we be more inclusive of our hermanas Afro-Latinx, Indigenous women, and advocate for our access to health, education, work, knowing that we have access to all those things due to our privileges?
For sure. I mean, I think it's important to be conscious of your privilege. Even, I mean, in the position that I'm in, I was a former chief curator and deputy director in a mainstream art museum here in Santa Clara. And that is the definition of gatekeeping at a museum, is having that position, is being able to kind of greenlight projects and look for artists that you want to work with. And so I think that it takes a reckoning. For me, I think it was really sitting with, wow, I get to make these decisions now. What does that mean? And having to sit with that and having to really continue that, even though I've reached a certain level of success in the museum field, there are real obstacles and limitations to do the kind of work that I like to do there. And then recognizing my privilege for being in a position of power, and that with that comes responsibility. So it is, I've always kept in touch with my mentors. I've always, like, in this new position that I'm in, we're developing an advisory panel of all people, not just scholars or museum professionals, but community people. One of the things that I have to do in my role is meet with community regularly, because that's what equity is. And so I think in that, if you're meeting with the same people all the time, or they look like you, or they have the same experience as you, then you're not doing your job. Right. And that includes then is thinking about who am I meeting with, what other people out there or experiences out there am I not reflecting in the work that I do. So it's a consciousness, but it's a practice too.
Okay, so we have one more question. Let's see. Oh yeah, so how have you all grown and maintained, building networks during the pandemic?
I'm curious to hear Darcy answer this question.
So I have an interesting answer because virtual spaces are like my jam. Like, like as an introvert, I'm like, oh, this makes it so much easier for me to show up. I will say that being able to connect with people in this virtual space has made it easier for someone like me, right, who is painfully introverted, to maintain those connections. I will say also, as a single mom of a very young child, and without proper childcare, it has also made things a lot more accessible for me. I probably wouldn't have been able to participate in many of the things that were going on in response to COVID and the pandemic had there not been this ability to virtually connect with people. So I have actually been able to reconnect, deepen relationships, make many more relationships throughout this pandemic than I was doing previously, because of many different circumstances. So I welcome this hybrid world that we're going into, where we get to reconnect in person, because I do miss seeing people's faces and seeing people in person, but I also appreciate the ability to have these new technologies that allow us to meet people in different capacities while my son is sitting right here, or while I have to do that. I will say, on the other hand, when I think about that and the work that we do, it just also is a reminder that not everybody has access to this technology to be able to connect with systems. And that's something we really need to fix as well. It's a very urgent justice issue that's facing our community.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Darcy.
Sorry, thank you, Andy. So now, we're wrapping everything up. I did want to have, if you are comfortable, as the panelists, sharing some sort of like contact information, whether it's like LinkedIn, or any other way that students can, connect with you and, further their networking.
All right, so that wraps up our Latinas in Leadership career panel. Thank you so much to everyone who showed up and tuned in. But muchísimas gracias to our wonderful, amazing panelists today. Please, everyone, feel free to unmute your mic. Like, let's hear it.
Yay. Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Gracias, mujeres.
Yes, muchísimas gracias for just making the time to be here today, to bless us with your energy, with your knowledge and wisdom. Such an honor to share space with you all. Well, folks, if you would like to rewatch this, feel free to check out the link. It will be posted to our YouTube channel. The link you can find in our central link tree. Hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.